You're listening to Keeping It 100 with Mel and Bruce, sponsored by the 100 Black Men of Las Vegas. What they see is what they'll be. I'm Mel Tiller, your host. I'm thrilled to be with you today, and I'm thrilled to have our next guest. This is her second time on the show. Her name is Stephanie Phillips, and she wants to be your United States Senator. She's running for the Senate. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me back.
Listen, I really appreciate you coming back, and I really appreciate your attitude. Ladies and gentlemen, we had Stephanie on the show very recently, and after the interview, Stephanie asked me a great question. She said, "What did I say that you disagreed with?" I said, "Oh, there might have been a thing or two." So we sat down and we had a conversation, and she said, "Well, let's have a conversation on radio, and let's just kind of talk about a couple of things." And so I greatly appreciate that, because not very many politicians are willing to do that. So let's talk a little bit about Stephanie Phillips and why she's running for Senate and what she plans on doing once she gets there. So Stephanie, why are you running for United States Senate?
Well, I've said many times, there's many reasons actually, but what made me hop into politics was during COVID, and when they shut us down and called our small businesses non-essential and were forcing people to get a vaccine to keep their job. They closed our schools and churches and masked us. And to me, everything was unconstitutional and un-American. And I didn't agree with the lockdowns as long as they went. And I think that it hurt a lot of businesses and a lot of people around the country. And I thought, I'm going to hop in and do something about this. And also, I don't believe we have representation for our side at the federal level. And I look at some of these candidates that run for office, and I think that we need somebody different. We need a new voice and a fresh face. And we see too many times there's carpetbaggers that come in here from other states that don't know anything about our state, and they just want a seat. And they don't care what they run for. They run for multiple seats.
Yes.
We've got the recycled and perennial candidates that, run constantly and lose. And so, and I see what is happening with kids in our school systems and the things that they're teaching them. And I'm a mom. I have 2 kids, and the kids are the future of our nation, and we need to protect them. And, we see what's going on at the southern border and sex trafficking, and, the list goes on and on. But really why I jumped into this is because of COVID and what they did to us.
Okay. You mentioned a number of things I'd like to kind of just touch on briefly. Let's talk a little bit about COVID. We do know that shutting things down certainly hurt businesses. There's no question about that. Do you believe that lives were saved?
I think that to some degree, the people that were vulnerable and had health issues, yes. But after we saw, what was going on when the vaccine came out, we saw that after they told us that the vaccine would prevent the spread and that they wouldn't spread it to anybody and they wouldn't get COVID after they got the vaccine, that was a complete fabrication and lie, because people who were vaccinated could spread it, and they even admitted it. I mean, we all know that. We all heard that. So I think that it was completely oppressive what they did. The lockdowns were way too long. And these businesses that went out of business in our state, many of them will never come back.
I do agree with that. Do you believe in science?
Well, of course.
Okay. And there are a number of of Republicans, people on that side of the political fence, who don't necessarily believe in science. And so I was wondering if you believe in science, and do you also believe that a number of people across the entire globe, a lot of people died because of COVID?
A lot of people did die due to COVID. Yes, they did.
Okay, all right. You also talked about, you also mentioned our side. Tell me exactly what you mean by our side.
Well, I'm a registered Republican, as you
Okay.
know, and
Yes.
I'm running in a Republican primary, and our two senators are Democrats, and three of the four House representatives are Democrats. So that's what I mean by that.
Okay, great. So talk to me about the concept. The Republicans have kind of, or a number of Republicans have kind of changed concepts a bit. You all now embrace groups like Proud Boys, Oath Keepers. How do you feel about those groups?
You know, I embrace Americans.
Okay.
And there's all kinds of groups out there, that have their social issues and all of that. The ones you mentioned, BLM. I mean, you can go down the list of who stands for what. But as far as I'm concerned, we're Americans, and I think we lost sight of the fact that we are living in a country that provides so much opportunity, and we need to get away from, I believe, these labels, these, one group speaks for all. I don't partake in that. I think that we need to look at all of us as American people in our country that we need to protect and preserve.
Okay. Recently, we know that the Speaker of the House lost his job, and while Jim Jordan was running to be Speaker of the House, there were a number of people on his side who used intimidation in order to try and get people to vote for him. So what we see from time to time with the Republican Party and with the embrace of the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, the tactics that Jim Jordan and his followers used, we see an embrace of violence. We see an embrace of intimidation. Do you agree with those tactics?
I think that everybody should be free to vote for and support who they want to.
Yes.
And this, without being under duress or threat or, anything, of course. I think what's happening with Jim Jordan and the speaker and with Kevin McCarthy and all of that, it's been a mess, and I hope they get it squared away quickly because the country has business to do. And the more fighting that there is, they're not serving the American people. So I think there are those that are working towards that goal to get that fixed, and there are some that are fighting against it, and it doesn't serve any of us, for sure.
Is there a particular candidate that you are supporting for Speaker of the House?
I believe there's a number of good ones out there. I think Jim would have been good. Byron Daniels, I think he's a great candidate. So I think there's many. I just think they need to make a decision and vote and move on.
Okay. And so you thought that, or you think that Jim Jordan would have been a good Speaker of the House?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So for those who say that he's a bit of a firebrand, a bomb thrower, and that he's been in Congress for a long period of time and has never passed a bill, what would you say to those folks who have doubt about his ability to be Speaker of the House based on his prior record?
Again, everybody has a right to their opinion. And I've seen him many times in committees and hearings. And I think he's very smart. And I think he wants to do the work of the American people. And, everyone's going to have a certain opinion of him.
Okay. What is your vision? Because if you become senator, you're going to be one of the most powerful people in the United States. What is your vision for the United States?
I think that we need to preserve our country and we need to protect our country. And at the moment, it's not being protected. And we see what's happening at the southern border. And that's unsustainable. We can't possibly keep letting in. It's just an open faucet. It just they keep pouring in and pouring in. And we're all paying for that. And, the FBI just warned that they think it's likely Hamas terrorists are coming through our border. They don't even know, I don't think. And, they caught almost 180 known terrorists on the watch list coming through the border in recent past. And to me, that's unconstitutional. They are supposed to be protecting our country and our states, and they're not. So just that in and of itself, and then all of the, the consequences, the fentanyl, the sex trafficking, these kids that are being raped multiple times a day. Where are we with that? I don't hear elected officials talking about that. Who's going to be their voice? We have to step in. So as far as America goes, I want our country to prosper. I want us to be free. I want us to be, protected, and look at our country first and Americans first.
Our presidential elections are coming up. We have on the Republican side a number of individuals who are running for office. Which presidential candidate do you support?
I have said many times on this question, whoever that nominee is going to be, which it looks like it's going to be President Trump or Governor DeSantis, by looking at the numbers, and probably President Trump. So I will support either of those nominees, whoever gets the nomination.
Okay. Do you support Governor DeSantis's quote unquote, war on woke?
Well, the woke ideology and these things, I don't agree with. And I believe that he has done some good things for Florida. And I agree with many of them.
Okay. All right. And you say that you would support President Trump. Should President Trump, if found guilty of a number of the charges that he finds himself facing, if he were found guilty, do you believe that he should be held accountable?
Well, if he's found guilty, if anybody is found guilty, in a trial or case or whatever that is, then there's consequences for that.
Okay. Talk to me about what you like most about Ron DeSantis.
During COVID, when he kept his state open and he let people go to work, and he wasn't prescribing to all of the lockdowns, the mandates, and all of these things. I think that, and looking at the numbers of the people who died versus not, and you compare it to a state that was completely locked down, I think he did the right thing. And Governor Nunn did the same thing in South Dakota.
Okay. Talk to me about what you like about former President Trump.
Well, under President Trump, we all know that our economy was probably the best that we've seen in our lifetimes. And there was record low unemployment with all minority groups and across the nation for everybody. The tax cuts were helping a lot of people. He did a lot of things for this country that were good, and he tried to make America prosper, and America did. And now we look at what we're in, and we see the economy, we see the gas prices, grocery prices. everything has completely gone the other way. And I think a lot of people are hurting now.
Okay. Talk to me about what's happening around the world. Um, do you support Ukraine, or do you support Russia?
Well, I think that when I travel around the state and I talk to people about this, I think the consensus is we don't support Putin invading them. However, the money that we're sending to Ukraine is just, to me, they just keep writing blank checks. And there's not been any accountability for that. And now, where are those weapons going? Some say that they're in the hands of Hamas. So, and America paid for that. And we keep sending money over there, but we don't have money to send to our southern border. So I have a problem with how much money is going. Those are our tax dollars. And when we can't even protect our own border in America, but yet they want to protect Ukraine's border, there's got to be some accountability there.
So
and
you would not support the United States supporting Ukraine?
I think there needs to be accountability. I think they need to show us, where is that money going to? You know, we see Zelensky buying expensive property around the world, and I've read many articles about that. Where's that money coming from? There's just so many questions there, and I think that they owe America the answer of where that money exactly is going.
And from your standpoint, defending freedom and not allowing individuals like Putin to simply by force run in and take over countries like Ukraine, you would not be concerned about that?
Well, it's always a concern, you know, around the world. We see China with Taiwan. We're going to be dealing with that and have been dealing with that. We look at Iran, you know, threatening to hop into this war. We're always the peacekeepers, and we always are defending freedom around the world. So, but sometimes we get into these endless wars, and what good does that do? Sometimes, like I haven't seen any meaningful peace talks from Biden with Ukraine and Russia. So I think that sometimes we need to look at that rather than just pouring money into and going into all these countries.
So what would you do, and what would you have Biden do to protect or to help protect Ukraine?
Well, I think that way back when, I believe if President Trump were in office, that wouldn't happen, because I believe Biden is weak, and we weren't in any wars with President Trump. I mean, they knew where he stood, and he led with strength, and they knew that if they were going to do something like that, President Trump would step in with force. And
so you believe that Trump would have stopped Putin?
I believe so.
That's now I'm going to tell you, that is something that I absolutely don't agree with.
That's okay.
And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later. I didn't see Trump stop Putin from doing anything. As a matter of fact, he appeared to agree with Putin more so than not. But that is the opinion that some do have. Let's talk a little bit about Israel, Hamas. Where do you stand with this Israel and this Hamas situation?
Well, you know, Hamas, they're terrorists.
Yes.
And they came in and killed innocent civilians. So Israel's attacked. They have a right to defend themselves. And Israel is our greatest ally in the Middle East. And I believe in helping them, because we have to fight terrorism.
We have to fight terrorism. Yes. Talk to me about, let's talk a little bit now about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court recently overturned affirmative action. Do you agree with that Supreme Court decision?
You know, we had talked about that before, and I said yes. And the reason is that I believe that things should be merit-based. You know, jobs, applicants into schools. It should be based on merit, not someone's skin color.
Okay, all right. So let me say that we do realize that certainly people from our community realize that before affirmative action, African American and people of color were kept out of places like Harvard, and that we were denied accessibility. We did not have accessibility. And so what affirmative action did was allow us to have some, and still not what we considered enough, but some accessibility. The problem that many people have is they think that accessibility means that they were giving away degrees, and they certainly weren't doing that. Some believe that having accessibility meant that they were allowing people in who were not qualified. For instance, Barack Obama. Obviously, Barack was one of those individuals who was qualified, and once he got in, had to earn the degree. I know that in our last conversation, you and I talked, or you spoke about people being allowed in as if they were given a free ride. And that is not how that works. That's certainly not how we see that. Obviously, in order to get a degree from Harvard, first of all, you have to be allowed entrance, and then you have to earn the degree. Nobody's going to be given degrees. And so we feel that was many people in my community feel that was a major error. And we also feel that accessibility is now going to be denied. How do you counter that opinion?
You know, I think that our country has come a long way in recent decades, and there is much more inclusion and much more opportunity, and for everybody. And I believe that it's good that we've come a long way because we needed to. And the things that happened to minorities in the past, it's terrible. It's, you know, we've talked about racism and all of that. That's not good. That only tears people down and tears apart a society. And there's no place for that, and shouldn't be. And there's always going to be, you know, that one person. There's always a bad apple in the bunch. But as far as the affirmative action and all this, it's just, we talked about the legacy policy at Harvard. I believe you asked me about that, right? Yes. So why should they have a leg up just because a family member went there? Or why should they have any special treatment? I believe that the treatment should be equal for everybody. And it should depend.
And so just so the audience is aware of what we're talking about, there is something called legacy, and colleges pay attention to the fact that one's parent or one's relative might have gone to the university, or if one's parent or relative makes a contribution to the school, then that person has as you say, a leg up, and is looked at differently that legacy is still in place. And so most of the people who benefit from the legacy policy tend to be white individuals. And so the policies that benefit white students still in place. Policies that helped Black students gain access is now been removed. And we believe that that is a mistake, that is a problem, that is going to face and hurt African Americans and people of color for many generations to come. So talk to me about your vision for America.
Well, like I said before, I think that my vision is that America prospers. And I believe America, we should be energy independent. We were before and we should again. We should bring jobs back to America, made in America. And there's no reason why we can't. And we've kind of given away things that we shouldn't have. And we need to build up our country, protect our country. So we need to look at the future generations coming up because they're the ones that are going to be taking care of us. So we need to invest in them and have them love our country and want to serve our country. And I think that that is a common goal in general America, that we want to be prosperous and make good decisions for us and not give things away to other countries.
Let's talk a little bit about January 6th. I have heard a lot of different descriptions of January 6th. How do you see January 6th?
You know, we talked about that before too. And I believe it was, a group of people protesting, and they believed the election was stolen. There was fraud, and everybody has a right to protest. I know a lot of people called that an insurrection, and everybody looks at it, thinks of it differently. The way the mainstream media put that out there and put certain video clips, were very pointed to fit their narrative. But the thing is that we've not seen all of the video footage, and they haven't released it. And they're not releasing it because they're trying to hide, what really happened. We see some of this footage where the DC police were walking people and escorting them through the Capitol building, peacefully talking. We've seen that. We talked about the shaman. I forget his real name. He was sent to prison, but as soon as that video footage was released, they let him out of prison because it proved his case. I mean, the police were escorting him literally through the building. So
tell me how you see it, and give me your description of January 6th.
I believe people were protesting, and they were unhappy with how that turned out. And people believe that the 2020 election was stolen, that there were fraud in many states. And those people had every right, all of us do. Under the Constitution, we have the right to protest. And I believe that when they try and say that Trump incited an insurrection, I don't agree with that narrative. And because out of his own mouth in that speech, he said peacefully protest. And that's not what the media put out there. They wanted to hide that part of it. And they pick and choose.
So let's talk about what happened that day. So you are comfortable with the protest. You're comfortable with what happened on January 6th.
I believe there were bad actors placed in there. There were bad actors that went there to make the whole group look bad. They had a permit to protest. So, and they have a right to do so. And we just saw a whole group just protest and take over the congressional building there. People have a right.
So when on January 6th, there were a number of individuals who broke through the barricade, who attacked police. Policemen died, harmed police. Were you okay with that?
What policemen died?
There were several policemen that were injured. One policeman died. And so
That
were you
policeman,
were you okay with that?
well, of course, I don't want violence, and I'm not for policemen getting injured. And the policeman, I forget his name at the moment, that died, he didn't die that day. He died of natural causes, and his own mother said this, and the media put it out there that he was bludgeoned with a fire extinguisher, and that's how he died. Well, he didn't. That's all false. So the media wants to push a certain narrative. He didn't die that day. He died after, and he died of natural causes.
Okay.
I believe it was
And
I believe it was a stroke, and his own mother came out and said that in a press release.
and do you also there were individuals who were hunting Vice President Pence. Were you okay with that?
I don't know about anybody hunting Pence. I've not heard that before. But if anyone going in to do harm
Yes.
to any of our elected officials, of course that's wrong. Of course that's wrong. I would never support any of that. No.
Okay. And you don't believe that President Trump called those individuals to Washington at that particular time, and once the rally was done, pointed them to the Capitol building and told them to go there and fight.
Well, if you look at the timeline, he didn't tell them to go fight. He said to peacefully protest. And if you look at the timeline, the group was already at the Capitol, a large number of them, before his speech was even done.
And so you
And the
believe,
media doesn't tell you that, though.
and you believe
That.
that President Trump had no accountability for those events that happened that day.
When they say that he incited an insurrection, I absolutely disagree with that.
Okay, and there's some talk from him and some others about pardoning those individuals who participated in that event. Would you agree with pardoning those individuals?
You know, it's like we talked about this before too. You would have to look at each case and what exactly they did and what happened with each one. So without having all of the facts from each one of those cases, I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay.
But certainly the people that stepped into the Capitol and the DC police opening the doors and ushering them in, letting them in, escorting people through. I mean, that's so that's on video. You can watch that.
Is that the narrative that you have?
No, it's not a narrative. It's just video footage that I have seen that has the part that has been released. I have seen that.
So you didn't see the video with them breaking the doors down and them overwhelming the police.
I saw that too, and I also saw protesters that were there pulling off and getting the people out that were trying to break the windows and all of that. The people there were trying to defend the building and take those people out and stop them from breaking the windows. I saw video of that too. But those types of things, the media is not going to put out there. I believe they gaslight America, and they put out only what fits their narrative. And so, of course, they don't want to, put out there that all these people were surrounding the ones breaking the windows and pulling them off and trying to get them to stop. They don't want to put that out there. I've seen it with my own eyes. There is video footage of that. And there is video footage of the DC police letting people in and they walking in and just, that is, I mean, it's out there. You can see it.
That's a very, very interesting narrative. We do know that at one point, Kevin McCarthy was Speaker of the House, and he had access to all of that footage. We also know that he is an avid Trump supporter. And so with him having control of all of that footage and even telling the American public that he was going to release footage that showed, let's say, a gentler side of what happened on January 6th. Once he gained control of all of that footage, he did not put any of that footage out. Do you believe that he would have hidden footage that showed the January 6ers in a good light?
There's a reason why that footage has not been released.
Okay.
And I believe that they owe it to America. We deserve to see that footage. And they should release. I don't know why he didn't. And I'm not sure I would call him an avid Trump supporter. I think that he has supported him somewhat in the past, but I believe he should, and whoever is in charge should release that footage. They owe that to the American people.
Who won the last election? Did Trump win or did Biden win?
That's a highly debated subject. And, they say Biden got 81 million votes, right? So if anybody looks at Biden as a president versus the popularity of President Obama, and you look at rallies, you look at attendance, you look at, how America feels about him, and you look at Trump rallies and how many people come to see him and all this, you can't tell me that President Biden is the most popular president in American history.
No, well, no, I don't know that anybody has said that.
Well,
and I don't know, yeah, but I don't know that anybody has said that Trump was the most popular president in American history either.
Isn't 81 million votes more than anyone has ever received by far?
Are you saying that you believe that Trump got more votes than Biden did? And that
I'm saying that for people, that's a hard pill for people to swallow, that he got 81 million votes, which is way more than any other president. That would tell me he's the most popular president if that many people voted for him. I believe that there's problems with that, and that's why people doubt that. And also just because of all of the evidence that has come forward of fraud. And people look at that. Some people ignore it. They willfully are blind and don't want to look at the evidence that is out there. So I think that until, and this will probably never happen, but until that election is completely gone under a forensic audit to where we really see and everything is transparent, people will always doubt the validity of that election.
Okay. And so I hear you saying that you believe that Trump won the election.
I believe that there was fraud. I believe there's a lot of evidence out there. And I believe that the 81 million votes was not accurate.
Okay. All right. Many people believe that the Republican Party now is moving away from democratic principles and moving more toward authoritarian principles. Do you agree with that?
Who is saying this?
Many people believe that the Republican Party is now moving away from democratic principles and moving more toward authoritarian principles. Do you believe that?
No, I don't believe that.
Okay. And
do you?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that Trump is an authoritarian. I don't believe that he believes in the Constitution, and I don't believe that he believes in democracy. I think that when we look at where the Republican Party is now, that it is moving more towards fascism than toward democracy. If we take a look at the voter suppression bills that have been passed, if we take a look at some of the rulings of the Supreme Court, I think that there are a number of indications, and even the embrace of violence. I understand kind of what you said about the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers. These organizations openly embrace violence. You think that Jim Jordan would be a good Speaker of the House, whereas those individuals who supported him and wanted individuals to support his candidacy, they were intimidating individuals and intimidating the wives of individuals who did not vote who did not vote Jim Jordan's way. I think that the embrace of violence is a very, very dangerous, thing, and that is not a democratic concept. So yeah.
Talk to me about and how are you saying that President Trump embraces violence? And if that's what you're saying, then tell me how and where. What has he said or done that embraces violence?
And in a very recent speech, he said that if anyone steals from a store, that they should be shot. Now, obviously, individuals who steal from a store should not be allowed to steal from a store, and they should be held accountable. They should not be shot. He has in a number of his rallies, he's talked about the fact that people should be knocked out. I think that he clearly embraces authoritarians around the world, embrace Putin, embrace the president of North Korea, and talks about Erdogan, strong men being smart. I think that I believe that he does embrace violence. He does embrace the Proud Boys, stand back, stand down, and it's difficult to watch. It's difficult to watch the Republican Party embrace the Proud Boys, embrace the Oath Keepers, organizations like that openly embrace violence, and then say that the Republican Party is not moving in that direction. If the Republican Party were not embracing violence, violence and intimidation, it would not embrace the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers or organizations like that.
Well, I don't embrace violence, and I think that is wrong. How do you feel about BLM and the violence from all of the riots and all of that? Burning buildings, cars, looting all these stores, destroying businesses.
Violence is never something that is acceptable. Yeah. When we look at how Black Lives Matter started, we're talking about it started with George Floyd, and the concept that Black Lives Matter and that police brutality is not something that is acceptable, and that police they act differently, and the laws that they promote those laws differently in Black communities than they do in other communities. Data says that they use more violence in our communities, and when we say Black Lives Matter, we're saying police don't beat up on our people, police don't kill our folks, and that we should be treated, Black folks should be treated the same as any other race. So,
of course.
So when we talk about Black Lives Matter, we want to talk about the concepts. If somebody burns something down, they should be held accountable. Now, But we also want to understand that the individuals who started Black Lives Matter, those individuals are not presidents and senators and speakers of the House. And so there is a difference. There's a difference when a Jim Jordan condones intimidation towards somebody who did not vote for him. And Black Lives Matter. I think you're talking apples and oranges here. And I can understand why one wants to conflate that. But violence is not
Yeah.
is not
Violence. Yeah, because that didn't really do any good for their cause. I think that it hurt because you see all these stores. I mean, we saw the videos and the riots and people killed and beaten to a pulp and I mean, we saw all of this, and what good did that do?
I think that
It hurt.
Yeah,
it
but I
hurt their communities. Actually,
yeah, but I think
that
if you are trying to compare January 6th to the Black Lives Matter movement, then you're
I'm
talking
just talking about violence.
then you're talking apples and oranges here. Those
I'm
are
talking
not
about violence.
Violence is never condoned. Violence is never condoned. I think that the violence of January 6th certainly is not condoned, and those people should be held accountable. I think everybody should be held accountable. And in civil riots, if there's burning, if there's destruction of property, then those folks should also be held accountable. There's no question about that. Listen, you have been wonderful with your time. I greatly appreciate our conversation.
Are we done already? That went too fast. We have so much more to talk about.
Yes, we do. We're gonna have to bring you back. So I'm gonna leave the last word with you.
Well, I appreciate it. And, we talked about this before, and the first time I came on, and we said that we may not agree on many of these subjects, but that's okay. Because I think what's missing in the country is the dialogue. And I have said many times that if we would just sit down and we talk about certain subjects, whatever that is, and I believe that we would agree on more than not. And if people would just sit down and talk instead of saying, you see this often where, oh, that person's a Democrat. And then all of a sudden the wall comes down and there's no discussion because you already have a preconceived idea of that person, and vice versa. When you hear, oh, that's a Republican, oh, we're not going to agree with them. So these party labels and these things have come in, and the country has been so divided, and I believe in large part due to the media and social media. But I think that if people sat down like you and I, we're having a discussion, and it's a very respectful discussion.
Yes.
And sure, we disagree on some things, but I also believe that there's places where we do agree because we're all Americans and we're people. And I think that with politicians, a lot of times, we talked about this too, they don't want to get into into the woods. They don't want to get into the sticky stuff and the controversial stuff like what you and I are talking about. But it's necessary. And if I'm going to represent the people and represent people of this state, I have to look at everybody as a whole. It doesn't matter what party you are. It doesn't matter what color you are or your background or your religion. We're all Americans. And when I look at this state, and when I look at this seat that I'm running for, that's how I look at it. I'm not going to put one person aside because they're a part of this group or that group or that group. I have to represent everybody. So I'm willing to have these discussions. And I told you before, you asked me the first time I was on, is there anything off the table? And my answer to you was no, because why should there be anything off the table? we should talk about all of it. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come talk with you and have this discussion. And I know there's so much more that we can talk about, and I would love to come back sometime. And if anybody wants to visit my website and see my policies and things that I'm about, it's phillipsfornevada.com, and that's the number 4, phillipsfornevada.com. And and anybody can reach out to me, any of your listeners, viewers. My cell phone number is on my website, and it's on all my materials, so people can call me and reach out, and I would love to have discussions with everyone.
Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
You've heard it here on Keeping It 100 with Mel and Bruce, sponsored by the 100 Black Men of Las Vegas. What they see is what they'll be. I'm Mel Tiller, your host, and that's Keeping It 100.